Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings be upon you in the name of God, the most gracious and the most merciful. All glory and praise belongs to God, and salutating with salutations to the beloved and all the beloveds of God, who include Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his holy family. Thank you so much for tuning into our 16th Divine Clinic Foundation podcast series called Healing is Believing. And our subject today is spiritual accountability. I'm your host, QW. Joining me is my co-host, the delightful Imam Saab, and as well our spiritual ambassador for the Divine Clinic Foundation, Dr. Isa White Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, Imam Saab and Dr. Isa Muhammad. How are both of you today?
Wa alaikum salam. Alhamdulillah.
And how about yourself, Dr. Isa?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, wonderful. So, as we're gonna, today we're here to discuss about, spirituality and the understanding and the accountability of it. And I would like to just share like an experience. I was having my iftar, and there were some of these women. They were discussing, and they were talking. Well, it's all just mind over matter, because what happens is when you become spiritual, you ascend to such a level that it takes you away from the reality of this world. And I was part of another conversation. I was trying to understand what they were, and the lady was telling another lady that it's all just mind over matter. And as she was explaining to her, oh, there is no such thing as negative entities. It's there, but it's just our mind, and it's actually like hypnosis. There are people out there that will try and influence you to believe that these entities are there, and they're hypnotizing the individual so that they become lured and then become a part of giving to these people that say that they remove negative entities. And I thought it was quite interesting, because we understand the Quran, there's a life of the seen and the unseen. And when people become so much into conjecture and the mind takes over, then they become part of, everything is logic. So Imam Saab, since you've dealt with so many cases, and I think one of the misconceptions that people have and understanding, I thought that would be a nice way to, bring about question that comes about when a lot of people are talking, but they don't really have much insight or understanding, because truly, as the more we know ourselves, the happier we truly are, and we understand too, with the union of to be with Allah is the greatest happiness, and that is the greatest sacrifice, and only the ones of the Prophet, the Ahlul Bayt, and the saints thereafter, the Awliya Allah, are the ones who have perfected their faith and into righteousness, and have been able to be truly divine and manifest with great favors to help and heal humanity. So I'll let you carry on the discussion on these misconceptions. Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, it's very interesting, really, because clearly where these women are, I mean, I don't know these women personally, but I can say that their statement is one that is predominantly kind of held with by people in the mainstream, of the understanding that the physical world is all you can understand, and that there is nothing beyond the realm of tangibility. Now, I will ask a simple question to these women and anybody else who also thinks in this type of mindset, is that if I said to you, what are your thoughts? And what is your mind? Because your mind itself and your thoughts are intangible. Yeah, it's not contained in the box. It's not something you carry with you in a suitcase. But it's something that's very specific to you, isn't it? The way you think, the way you act, your consciousness is an intangible aspect of a human being. It's part of the fabric of the human condition. So clearly, what you can understand is that these women have no concept of intangibility. They have clearly not reached a state of consciousness with Allah, with God, with the greater power, the One, the Creator. They have not reached that state of consciousness, and instead they have delved into mindless discussion about something which they truly cannot understand. And because they cannot understand it, they then would say, well, it doesn't exist. And in the same way, you have many people who are praying towards the Kaaba. Yeah, they're praying in the direction of Qibla, but their hearts are empty and their minds are bogged with day-to-day issues and spiritual distress and all the other sort of factors that are plaguing humanity today. In the same way, so when we understand that these women, they represent a large proportion of the Muslim population, and I say this quite strongly because the types of cases we deal with, they come from all walks of life. We have Christians who come to us. We've had, Muslims from different denominations within Islam come to us, and we ask the same question: who is responsible for you? Yeah, you've come here, which is a spiritual hospital, but who ultimately is responsible for you? And many of these people have actually aligned themselves with sheikhs, with spiritual guides. But if your spiritual guide has not understood the concept of the soul or the concept of even the spirit, the human spirit, then what type of spiritual guide are they? This is the question I'm asking. I'm asking that to everyone. Everyone who calls himself a spiritual guide, are you truly healing your students? It's not just about informing them of the greater good of the world and the leaves and how they fall and poetry of Rumi and things like this. All of these things are just attaining a certain level of consciousness, but it's not clearing and cleansing. It's not getting to the root of the problem. People talk today about whether humanity is a problem. It's not looking after the earth spirit, for example, the earth spirit, the feminine spirit is under distress. And the truth and the reality is that the only way that it can be healed is if we individually heal the individuals within a community, then the community is stronger. And these communities then would have a healing effect on the world itself, the world spirit. So, I mean, clearly these women, from the perspective they're talking about, they've never actually had to sit in a home where there's spiritual entities running around them, or that spiritual demons don't come and attack them in their state of sleep. And the reality of the situation is that, and it's quite sad really, because I'm assuming that obviously you talked about iftars and these women were with you and eating as well. So I would probably assume that they were also observing Ramadan as well. So obviously they would be of that faith. Yet, they believe themselves in a prophet of God who himself was able to see the world of the unseen when he was walking down the street, and he would be able to see angels, and he would exclaim to his companions, do not step here, do not go there, do not, there were all these different things that were happening, these different narrations going, and these are all recorded in their, in the narrations, in the traditions of the prophet. Peace and blessings be upon him, his holy family.
To interject here, because they were saying that, well, we can just recite Ayatul Kursi and the verses of the Holy Quran, and that's how the main protection that the Prophet brought would protect one from getting into in a situation being compromised.
I would have to strongly disagree with that statement. Because why? Because these women, much like their reasoning is only limited to their mind, that their reading Ayatul Kursi is only from the mind. So from that same level of belief, which is in a state of disbelief actually, right? Because they're not understanding the full scope and the full spiritual spectrum of this magnificent human specimen, of a man of greatness, of perfection, which was the Holy Prophet. They have not understood his spiritual essence. And if they haven't even understood that, then why are they reading these things? Because clearly it's not going to help them. It's not going to have the full impact. The full flavor is not experienced. I'm not saying to anybody not to read anything. I'm just saying that if you don't fully understand the essence of the reading, then how can you enjoy the full flavor or the full protection of that? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Dr. Isa?
I think you're absolutely right. There is a book in the Bible, and it's Second Timothy, and Second Timothy says that the man of God, or supposed to be the man of God, supposed to preach the word and fulfill the needs of the people. Now, if the individuals are going to the masjid, or they're going to the church, or they're going to the synagogue, and as you stated, they're going to the spiritual hospital. And if they're not preaching the word, if they're not doing the work of Allah, then who are they doing the work for?
Mm.
They're doing the work of Shaitan. I hate to put it that way, but it is. There's a book I read many years ago called Shaitan on the Pulpit. Because if you're not cleansing these people, and you're not helping these people, then what you're doing, you're throwing poison, greater poison, into their bodies, into their souls, that makes them even weaker and weaker and weaker. So the question is, as you pose, why are they not doing this thing? Mm-hmm. And the answer may be yes, they may not know, but I think they do know. Second, they have a lack of faith. It's one thing to talk about and to give a khutbah as to what took place in the past, but it's something very much more difficult to utilize the past to interject and create a narrative of what is taking place today. Mm-hmm. Because when you talk about that, what is taking place today, that puts you on edge. That makes you have to be accountable. All right? And you have to live accountable, and you have to be strong. Are they willing to be strong? Are they willing to be accountable? Are they willing to take on the mantle of being a strong disciple or the companion of the prophet by preaching the word? And most of them are not. And that's why oftentimes they reject some people like us, because we are bold, we're creative, and we're putting everything on the line. As Johnny Cash, I don't know if you know Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
He's a great singer. Right. He has a song says, "I'm toting the line." All right, we're toting the line of God, of Allah, right, with the following of the Ketub. And they don't want it because they're afraid of it. They play safe, and they're leading the people to hell. But when the people wake up, it's going to be a revolution, a spiritual revolution. We've seen this in other religions, and it's going to take place with our own community. In fact, it's already taken place. That's why we're here. All right, that's why we're creating and telling people about spirituality within Islam, cleansing. It's like some people talk about, in order to do well, all you got to do is think. Just think. But that's part of it. But they don't believe that there are spiritual forces out there that are negative. If we have spiritual forces that are positive, then you also have spiritual forces that are negative. And then you need a person like the Imam. You need a person like the Ketub to cleanse you from these evil forces. You see? So these Imams and some of the sheikhs, they're not doing what they were ordered to do by God, by the Prophet.
I completely agree with you there. With regards to understanding the role of a leader in the community, it carries a heavy, heavy price, because the reason with that being is that, I reach out to, if there are spiritual guides, watching or listening to this right now, is that in understanding that, we have this understanding of the human condition, which allows us to help and heal people from the very foundation from which they in which they were made, and how the human being is composed, because if you look at the physical body, is comprised in layers. So then do you not also think that the spiritual body of a human being would also be quite complex, and that dealing with the human spirit of a person, especially during healing, is a very sacred process. I mean, even if in Islam, if before you perform your salah, you're expected to perform wudu, yeah, which is a ritual washing. If you have to perform a ritual washing before prayer, then what about those who are interacting with your spirit in healing it, in helping you? You see what I'm saying? Because then that should be even more 10 timefold, the state of their condition, their spiritual condition. So even what we're saying is that even the spiritual guides today, they need our help. And I strongly believe that because, again, through our exposure of having discussions with, certain spiritually acclaimed individuals, that they have recognized a need to understand more and to get more. And the only way that we can do this is by inviting others forward to speak about, essentially what is affecting humanity today, and not leave it to women like this, for example, the conversations that these women are having, to
Right.
allow that to be the belief of tomorrow, because that is very dangerous. That is so dangerous, because if you don't believe in negative forces, then you do not believe in the Quran. It's very simple. I'm sorry. You're going to have to go and find another religion to believe in, because the Quran itself states in so many times. There's so many instances in the Quran, in the Holy Quran, where certain things have happened. How do you explain a woman bearing a child without any male interaction? How do you explain that? This is the fundamentally, you have to come to that realization, of understanding that there is one who is above everyone else, and that is Allah. And Allah is aware of His creation. And truly, to understand yourself, to understand Allah, you have to understand yourself first. And if you don't understand yourself and you are limiting your belief and your life to your mind, then your heart is asleep. And it's in the heart that the soul is in there, I mean, we talk about the soul. I don't think we give enough credit to the soul when we're speaking, because from the healing perspective, the whole process during healing, and especially with those who are suffering, their souls are crying for help. Their souls are literally crying for help. But the soul and the spirit is two different things. It's two different things. And the spirit itself is almost like an armor around the individual. And what we've noticed from all of the cases that we've dealt with, in all of the readings that we've given to people in understanding their current physical and spiritual conditions, is that a lot of this stems, 99.9% of the time, stems from the fact that their spiritual body, their spirit itself, has been tainted with negative energy from the get-go. So that when they were born into this world, they were born with a spiritual disadvantage. Yeah, and that is because of the ancestral energy has not been cleared, and is trying to clear itself. But the problem is, it takes a very, very long time, because energy builds up. That's what it does. Yeah, that's how it functions. There's a mechanism to everything. So if there's this spiritual disadvantage to you, to your spirit, that means that when you grow up, as you're growing up, you're going to be very, very sensitive to different energies around you. Now, these negative beings that these women are talking about, that they don't believe in, these entities also carry a certain signature of energy, and they're going to be attracted to certain like for like energies. Now, classically, when we talk about people getting married, for example, and when you look into the kind of the more sort of undeveloped countries, of how they used to perform marriage ceremonies, is that they would have a male and a female, and they would look at their star sign, they would look at certain astrological aspects of their life in order to gauge their spiritual states. That's just how they did it. In Islam, we don't need to do that, because it's a lot more, it's a lot more dynamic, but obviously the religions of the earlier times relied on this type of calculation. Now, if you have a man and a woman coming together, that the process of marriage, what it does is it infuses the two souls together. It's a contract. Yeah, you don't really need to have a registration form to say you're married, because God is the witness. Yeah, and everything is under the eyes of God. You can't escape Him, right? You can't escape Him. So if two sincere people come together sincerely and say that they want to marry each other, then we don't really need a witness, do we? because if they are two, but the problem with being is that human beings are very forgetful. So they will forget the conditions that they set that marriage to. So that in order to protect themselves, this is why we have elements of the Sharia law, for example, to help that. So that if there is any disputes in the marriage, then they can always revert back to the fact that, there's this dowry or this has to be paid or whatever else. So it's only that for protection. That's why they do that. But if you think from a spiritual perspective, if two people come together, then those joining of those two souls come together. But then also there's a joining of two spirits as well, because the two people are coming together, obviously for an act of intimacy as well, because that's part of marriage, right? To consummate, to have children, because that's what God expects from marriage couples, right? Married couples, that's what he would expect, for you to populate the earth. So the two beings, the physical beings and the spiritual, they have a spiritual resonance about them. And classically, the spiritualists of the past, of the old religions, so when they used to look at the astrological charts and things like that, when they were doing their calculations, they would assess the spiritual condition of that human being, of the man and the woman coming together, and whether them coming together. Now, they would talk on the fact that this is not aligned or whatever, but when you look at it from a fundamental level, from the perspective of Islam, at the energy level, what we're looking at is that if by bringing these two people together, is there going to be a cohesion? Yeah, is there going to be spiritual harmony by bringing these two people together? You see what I'm saying? So when you bring them together, is there going to be, and so now we have that understanding. So now let's take it up a notch. What about when you have these two people coming together who have got spiritual contamination from negative energy that is associated with their spirit, specifically to them, and the ancestral energy and all of these other different energies that are affecting them? Now you have a massive problem, because now when those children are formed from that marriage, they're going to be affected. Let's look at 2019. How many children around the world are being diagnosed with mental disorders? It's phenomenal how much underdevelopment within children that we have today. Yet we're living in a medically advanced society, a scientifically advanced society, where that even the quantum physicists have a stronger iman in Allah, even though they don't know his name, than the Muslims today. That is shocking. Yeah. That they can believe in certain theories and certain concepts, which even when they look into the atom, for example, when they discovered about the atom, they thought that was it. But then as science then, emerged and it carried forward and innovated and became, more and more specific, and obviously intelligence increased, we found out that the atom is actually made up of several different more components. And then where we are now, we found out that it's made from other components and even smaller components. And we can go right to the very beginning. But the thing is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is infinite. So I think we will still keep trying to find out what that little particle is. You see what I'm saying? And that's all part of Allah's wisdom. He's trying to show us signs. Clearly, he's giving us signs. Every single time we look around, there is existence of his signs. He says that verily, you look and the signs are there. So for these three women to say that they have seen God's signs, well, clearly they're walking around blind, aren't they, really?
Yeah.
They are.
And it's like, because of the lack of awareness and because the lack of esoteric knowledge and awareness of that in our upbringing, it's been exoteric, and I think that's where there's a disconnect. And truly to understand the eso and the exo together is when we can really live harmoniously and understand spirituality on a higher conscious level, understand Allah. Because what happens is people end up talking, well, it's coming out of their comfort zone of level 1 and 2 conscious level, and now you're rising above. And when you're rising above, when they see somebody of spiritual has ability to help another being, like with the cases that we have through a life cleanse, can only use your mind logically of scenarios like, this is like negative, this is dark, this is something they're playing with fire, failing to recognize the whole, component of what this really essence is all about. and then they end up calling it kufr and all these other words, connotations that come to it. And all we could do is give knowledge, empower, transform the people, bring awareness, and just like how you were mentioning, Imam Saab, with the faith that quantum physics has in God, and understanding that there is this energy, also the negative energies, and having understanding of that.
Of course, yeah.
And we truly lack in our world today true spiritual masters of the highest consciousness, and really blessed for humanity to, at this time, at this day and age that we're at, to have this help available and the service that we have. And
100%. I mean, when you look at the Kutu, for example, with how they help people with the healing powers that they have been bestowed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that, they can take a married couple who themselves have got this bad energy that we were talking about, which is in layers, isn't it? We've got the foundation level layer of their, there's this disconnect between the husband and the wife, and instead what most spiritual people are doing, and I'm going to be very brazen about this and just tell you what the truth. Most spiritual people, what they do is they will try and manipulate that situation to try and bring these two people together in a very artificial way, because they have concepts of knowledge of the unseen, which in itself is not of the high dimensions. So again, they're using something of the lower sort of conditioning of consciousness. They're bringing that sort of understanding in and trying to sort of rework or hash this marriage together. Often then this can cause many problems down the line as well, because there's always a cost. There's always a cost. And what the Qutub do, because they have the permission from God to do so, is that they can rebalance both of these people's energies back to a spiritual state in which they can be harmonized and live a much more peaceful life, you see. So that automatically, that once the cleansing occurs, that there's this removal of this negativity from their spirit, which then evaporates and is gone. But it's then the bringing together of the family unit, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about very, very, very openly in the Quran, where he talks about his children of Israel, his tribes, his communities. It's his creation, and he wants his creation. He says, I've created man and woman to be together. I've created you in pairs. He's talking about this union of coming together as a community, as a unit, as a family. It's very important that we don't let go of the rope of Allah when it comes, really. And I think that's what we have to understand, especially if women like this, for example, with their way of thinking. I'm not saying that all women, I'm just saying these particular women with their particular belief system, they will be more swayed by people who then come on the mainstream platform, of entertainment, who will come and say, yo, your husband is like this, or it's like this, or whatever. And in terms of giving the understanding of the dunya perspective, and again, all of this belief is built up from, something that they're trying to rationalize, but they have not yet understood the essence of.
Mm-hmm.
So it will always, these fixes they give you will always be temporary. And this is why, we're seeing so many people feeling disenfranchised, right now, and more people single than ever. The number of women are outnumbering men, at the moment. We are at an epidemic at the moment, really. When we're looking at the scale of everything, there's a disjointed, way that we're all living. And I think we have to address this issue. If we don't address it within ourselves, then we will never, ever be able to fix our society. And it's not the governments, it's not this, it's not that. It's ourselves. We are the problem. We are our own problem in coming forward and seeking true help sincerely, And I think that's what from the way that we're talking, I think a lot of people will listen to us and say that we're crazy and we're mad. But, alhamdulillah, we can say that we belong to the camp of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, 1400 years ago, because he was labeled the same thing. Yet here we are 1400 years later, and he's the most beloved man on earth.
Yes.
Subhanallah.
Years ago, there was a movie called Flatlines. I don't know if either of you or
Flatlines, okay.
Flatlines. And it was about how these young kids, they're in medical school, and they flatline died, and they had to be revived in a harsh way Well, the point is that many people now are spiritually flatlined. They're dead,
Yes.
and they don't have the right doctor that's in the masjid, that's in the church, that's in the synagogue, that's in whatever place of worship to bring them out. Now, our cleansing comes from our doctor, okay, the imam, the katub, the right medicine, the right prescription to cleanse these people, to bring them back to a living level. Then, when they get to that living level, that negative energy, that negative thought, that negative issues that has been controlling their lives will be negated, will be eliminated, will be polarized so that they can live a more functional manner. Now, the institutions that these imams and others come from, they don't want to preach that because they're preaching a theology that is palatable for their own understanding and for their own survival. And what is their survival? The survival is being popular, being influential politically and socially, and being financially secured. And they don't want to do anything that may question or tamper with that. But when you have a real cleansing from a real doctor, those things do not matter, because what matters is what? The patient. So the patient, who are these sisters that the Sister Wahida is talking about, and the general population of our planet, they're being denied right teaching and the right doctor. And so, like Sister Wahida stated, they're blessed. We're blessed that we have someone on the scene, a group who understands this, and they know what needs to be done so we can create a better society. We're living in a tremendous time. And that's why I said earlier, we're like revolutionaries, because we're doing something, we're saying something, and we're following not just our faith, but we're walking the line and proving it. And we will be forced to prove it over and over again that what we're doing is the right, exact, and precise and truthful way. And there's no other way. So I encourage all of us to get in touch with the Divine Clinic and to follow the prescription so we can create a better society.
And it all starts with the individual. And
That's
this kind of goes back to spiritual accountability, in terms of who is responsible for you. And it's all well and good saying God is responsible, but then the Holy Quran is telling you that you'll be judged on the day of judgment. So if God is truly accountable for you, then you can just say, well, as much as most Christians also believe that Jesus died for their sins, then if that's the case, then why would you need to go to purgatory? Why would there be that resurrection in which, certain select few will be chosen on that day of resurrection? You see? So what we're understanding here, it really is that we have now moved into this field of, sort of gross misguidance and ignorance, because we have stopped believing that we are no longer accountable for ourselves. And so what we should do as a step towards taking accountability is to seek the counsel of spiritually rightly guided mentors, and go to them to seek their counsel, to seek their intercession, to seek their wisdom and their knowledges, And this is what the awliya of the past used to do. They used to travel all around the world, to find a teacher. And now it seems that the teacher must find the student. And it's it's a very bizarre time that we're living in now, because you have, from the subject matter of these women we're talking about, in terms of with what they were saying about even people who delve into spirituality, that they detach themselves. That's what they're describing. They're describing the process of detachment from the world, but they have not yet understood it, so it seems foreign to them. But you see, even when you go to that process of detachment, the true winners are the ones who go to Allah and then come back. Those are the true winners, you see, because there are many spiritualists out there who have kind of gained ascension and are kind of still climbing, but have not yet returned back fully, but are still speaking from that process. So when they're speaking from that process of where they are in consciousness, that they're able to enlighten people and give them, and people are drawn towards that because people are always drawn towards, knowing, more about yourself. There always will be groups like this, pickpockets of people within communities who will be drawn and to this type of magnetism of people who have gained a certain level of consciousness. But the true help comes from those who have already reached those divine gates of mercy, of the throne of God, and come back, as the case of the awliya of the past. You're mentioning Khwaja Garib Nawaz alayhi salam and Hazrat Abdul Qadir Jilani alayhi salam, in understanding their spiritual states and their spiritual stations. They are far above what anybody has achieved today, outside of the scope of what people are practicing and preaching today in terms of spirituality. So really, even when we're talking about spirituality, the types of information you're getting and the wisdom that you're getting from spirituality today is only a portion of what was given before. And we need to revive that, the classical teaching, the classical understanding, in terms of understanding our, clearly a sort of epidemic of an issue with belief. Because those who say they believe, they are now in a state of disbelief, because their minds cannot comprehend what the heart is talking about, or what the heart is trying to say, because the soul is locked under lock and key, and they are spiritually oppressing their souls. And that's a real shame. And it's truly only those who are spiritually afflicted, who understand the struggles they're going through. Yeah, if they were to come out to these women, for example, the women probably would turn around and say, oh no, it's all in your head. And that is a real shame, because, we're denying people help. We're denying people, a chance to get the right understanding. So if anyone out there is suffering and wants to know, or is just interested in understanding more, then please get in touch with the Divine Clinic Foundation, inshallah.
And I think also the problem is that because there's so many different sects in Islam, that we're here to unify. And that's what Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, legacy was, to have one ummah, believers, all of us to unite together. And, and it's the same story from, Christianity, Judaism into Islam. And that's what really true Islam is about believers and peace. And we really are here to help humanity to heal, so that we all have peace, within us, within our hearts, within our homes, and then that radiates and outwards and into the world. And what better, vessel in our time today that one can come up with the solution to help and heal humanity. And being the month of Ramadan, a month of purification, a month of really getting to know yourself truly through self-reflection, the life cleanse is the greatest gift that you can do to yourself, to help yourself, and to empower your family and for the generations to come. And so grateful for our teacher to be able to help us, and like all of us have been through a life cleanse and can speak with such assurity and clarity that it's the greatest gift from Allah. And truly, we are so grateful that His Rahim is here to help humanity. With this, thank you all for listening to our podcast. Should there be any questions, please reach out to info@thedivineclinicfoundation.org. Or if you have any topics you would like us to include or discussions, please also email us at info@thedivineclinicfoundation.org, and to understand our services at www.thedivineclinicfoundation.org. And before I wrap up here, Imam Saab and Dr. Isa, thank you so much for your insight and wisdom. And if there's anything else that you would like to share with our audience, please let me know, or we will wrap this segment up. Is there anything else?
No, it was the
Okay.
great amount of wisdom. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Imam Saab. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Alaikum salam.